Kentucky Newsmakers with Bill Bryant.
Good morning. We hope you're having a nice weekend. We have a packed edition of Kentucky Newsmakers for you today. State Auditor Adam Edlen had been considered a top contender for governor next year, but he has decided not to run for the state's top job in 2015. Edlen will be with us a little later to discuss his decision and where his office is looking for waste and abuse of taxpayers' dollars these days. That's coming shortly. But first, Lexington Mayor Jim Gray is here. The mayor has suspended the planned $351 million makeover of Rupp Arena and the Lexington Convention Center. He says it came after UK decided not to go forward with a major lease. There was already trouble for the ambitious project. The state legislature had declined to fund $80 million in bonds. City council members were ready with a long list of questions for the mayor, seeking specifics about the project. And the mayor's opponent in the fall election, Anthony Beatty, had identified it as a major issue that he said pitted downtown interests against neighborhoods. For now, the Rupp project is on hold. A lot of people are left wondering what's next. Let's turn to Mayor Jim Gray for an answer to that. It's good to see you, and thanks for coming in.
Oh, you too, Bill. Always.
Are you disappointed to be at this point that you simply were not able to get this ambitious plan off the ground?
Well, you know, Bill, I've done in my construction career in a family business. When I left our company and took this job on, the folks asked me to count the number of projects, and I said, you'll have to count. And they told me almost 850 projects that one way or another I had been involved in. And so I learned in that almost 40 years never to fall in love with a project. You know, sometimes you've just got to do your best and then you got to move on. And of course there's some disappointment, but I would characterize a disappointment as being disappointed that we're losing the possibility for as many as 3,000 jobs and creating a district for mixed-use development. But I'm committed to bringing jobs to Lexington, and that's a very big deal. We've been working on this.
Is it fair to say that you did fall in love with this project, though, that this was your vision, something that you wanted to see happen, and now that it's not, that doesn't sit well with you?
Well, no, I really, over time, I have had so many projects that have been very compelling, some that we were able to actually build and some that we weren't. What I look at it is as problem solving. You know, the university came to the city and said, you know, it's up to the city to address this problem. Well, and we took that and we worked on that. But you know, in a project like this, very complex, you got to have all the parties really at the table and singing off the same hymn, you know,
yep,
at the same time. So when that hasn't worked out, you know, these projects have a calendar of their own. So you got to move on to the next step. And because we didn't have the university's continuing support for the project today, that meant, you know, the Lexington Center has to move on with its own business. That's how I look at it.
What did the university cite to you as the reasons that they did not want to go forward with the project on the scale that you had planned?
Well, some uncertainties, uncertainties with an economy, uncertainties with college athletics today, perhaps public opinion may not be as favorable about the project. So you put all of that together and it just says that, you know, we're not all in agreement, and for a partnership to work, you know, you all need to have come to the same point of view. And it was pretty clear then that that wasn't working out, and the best thing to do in those situations is to, you know, turn the corner and move on.
Mayor,
and I think that actually can be very positive because it you know, I often say one door closes and another opens. And that's what good management and good leadership is about.
Well, would you agree that for this to move forward, that the dialogue is going to have to settle down some? How did this get to the point that there was so much apparent tension between the parties? You had this letter from the UK President, Capilouto, complaining that the university was being criticized and caught in the middle. Why did things get so contentious?
Well, you know, Bill, I just believe when we're in a project like this, you're going to have turbulence. It's very complex, lots of constituencies. And what I said at the time was, you know, let's step back, let's take a deep breath, let's examine where we are. And when we did that, the president was able to say, you know, we just think the timing is not right for this aspirational project. And that's okay. I believe that we did put a good plan together. It addressed lots of the needs and the problems of the existing Civic Center and the existing arena. And those problems aren't likely to go away, but, can we live with what we've got? Of course we can live with what we've got. Cities tend to survive and institutions tend to survive. The real question is, how do they thrive? So, going forward, when the time is right, there's a plan, and that plan may very likely be examined again at some point in time.
Your opponent in the November election, Anthony Beatty, says that the town and gown relationship has been tarnished by what has happened here and that new leadership is now needed. I would take it you do not agree with his statement.
Oh, whenever leaders are seeking to make some positive change, there's always going to be a level of tension. There's always going to be some level of anxiety that occurs. But what the challenge of leadership is to recognize that, we're taking this project or this initiative, we're doing it for the right reasons, and we're going to pursue that, we're going to prosecute it, we're going to engage it responsibly, and we're going to take it as far as we can, sometimes to complete fruition, sometimes you learn from it. I mean, we've learned from this project, for example, that there are many development opportunities within the 46 acres around Rupp Arena. Potentially an inspiring project that takes us to the roots, our history, the town branch park. But we've got these opportunities all over our city.
Mayor, were you surprised by the pushback that you saw from taxpayers, both those who were questioned in the city and then when there were statewide results as well, showing 3/4 of people didn't want taxpayers' money used for this, especially in light of the fact that Louisville got money for the Yum Center from state government?
Yeah, this project, of course, got lots of visibility. I think we always knew that a project with the visibility and the attachment folks have for Rupp Arena, that there would be a high level of interest in the project. So I think there again, that's when it's become so essential that all the partners and all the parties be speaking from the same sheet of music, actually have common agreement. So when we don't have that, it's just important to recognize, well, we don't have that today. The different points of view, often very legitimate different points of view. And so then moving forward, we'll say, let's work together where we can on other issues and other opportunities. And that's exactly the way. The university is just important, hugely important, enormously important part of the fabric of our community in so many ways, economically, culturally, socially.
So, Mayor, where do you think things go from here? And if you are fortunate enough to win a second term, is that the chapter that could be written within that term?
I won't speculate too far. What I can say is that the Lexington Center has now gotten the uncertainty really removed from its future. So the Lexington Center Corporation, the conferences, the conventions and so forth that are booked there, they can go ahead and full throttle, book for 2015, book for 2016, without the uncertainty that a construction project might present for them.
Because that was among the questions, and we released and reported, because we got a release of this list of questions that you were about to be confronted with next week. A meeting was set aside, and is that meeting going to go forward now?
Well, that's up to the council,
yeah.
Really.
So they were going to come with all of these questions. In one of those was, what happens in the meantime? How much displacement of convention business and activities at Rupp would be on hold for a period?
Right. And any ambitious project, any complex project like this one is going to mean that there's lots of scheduling, lots of sequencing that goes into it. That's just a normal part of doing business for a major project like this. As I say, Bill, I'm old enough now to have been involved in north of 800 of them, and so for me, it's part of the DNA that you'll work through these issues. That's the natural part of project management in a major construction project.
What best describes your feelings about the situation now?
Somebody gave me the word sanguine. That means optimistic. I'm optimistic because I know that Lexington is a great place. We've got great opportunities, and when we seize those moments and seize those opportunities, whatever they may, we are going to continue to be successful. And that's what, for me, continuing to work on creating jobs and opportunities for our citizens, ensuring that we're working every day in our neighborhoods, with our neighborhoods, to create a quality of life, a quality of place, encourage educational opportunities in our city. That's what Lexington's known for. Ted Bassett, who's the former, Ted, he's the former chairman of Keeneland and a real touchstone. He says to me, Jim, there's just something special about Lexington. It's just the place to be. And I think when we have opportunities actually to examine potential, to examine our future in the ways that we have even with this project, that's a good thing for our city.
So it may be scaled differently. It may come up at a different time.
That's something something for all the parties to examine sometime downstream, perhaps in the future.
Well, you've been working with that project. There's a whole lot of other numbers you've been crunching, getting ready to pass the city's operational budget. And are you pleased with the spending plan?
The council and the administration really worked well together. Vice Mayor Linda Gorton says that she thinks it may be just the best budget in her. I think she's had 16 years on the council and soon retiring. And so, when a group does work together, and I can tell you, compared to the private sector, these budgets in government are just inspected at a granular level. And the good news about this budget is that the council has really worked hard on it. The administration's worked hard on it, and we have some real opportunities in it. I'm really pleased that we've budgeted for a new senior citizens center. It could be one of the leading ones in the country and involve our senior citizens that are today very engaged, but could be even more engaged in once this project's built.
4th of July is coming upon us quickly. Lexington always has a major celebration. It lasts for several days, culminating in all the events on the 4th itself this year, Friday, right?
Yep. The 4th is always a big deal in Lexington. I think I'm told that more people enjoy Lexington's 4th of July per capita than anywhere in the country. And so we've got the patriotic concert on July the 3rd at Old Morrison at Transylvania, the 202nd Army Reserve Band, and this year, and we're going to be honoring heroes, veterans, our first responders. This is a big day this year, and everybody's excited about it. Of course, the
4th is the race and the parade.
The parade, lots of stuff going on.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it very much, and coming in on short notice. We appreciate that. And we're back in just a moment. State Auditor Adam Edlen wants to stay auditor. A change of plans for him, and it's coming up on Kentucky Newsmakers. Hoping you're having a good weekend. It was no doubt a tough and agonizing decision for Kentucky State Auditor Adam Edlen, who is not running for governor next year. He's been a young man in a hurry since joining Paul Patton's administration right out of UK and then becoming Chief of Staff to Governor Steve Beshear before being elected to statewide office. With an open race for governor next year, Edlen thought long and hard about trying to spring from auditor to governor after one term, but this week he decided he will seek re-election as auditor instead. In that role, he's been busy looking for waste and abuse of taxpayer money. Right now, his office is looking over the books in the Fayette County school system, which faces a major shortfall. Apparently, he has something to say about that, and there are other audits underway or recently completed as well. Auditor Adam Edlen joining us, and we thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Bill.
I know it does have to be a tough end of the week for you. Tell us about your decision process in this governor's race. We were led to believe that you pretty much had selected a running mate, that there was a likely announcement coming. You had selected a running mate?
Indeed. So we had done all the things that you need to do to, we checked all the boxes that you need to run a credible and aggressive campaign for governor. But at the end of the day, you have to make considerations about what the impact that endeavor has on the job you've got and your family. And Bill, one thing is I have the benefit of a lot of experience here, having been involved pretty intimately in governor's races in Kentucky for the last 20 years. I've got a pretty good sense of how all-consuming, all-encompassing of an effort it is. And when you think about what I would have to do, clearly running an insurgent campaign against candidates better known, that would have exacted a toll on me professionally. It would have exacted a toll on my family. And at 39 years old, which is teenage years in Frankfort, I just wasn't willing to make those sacrifices just yet.
What has been the reaction from those who've learned of your plans?
Well, I've everything from disappointment to understanding. I think I made the right decision. I think we'll find out down the road whether it was the smart decision. But I was so gratified as we explored this by the enormous level of support and well wishes we had from literally every corner of the Commonwealth. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision based on the future. You have to make a decision that permitted me to do a job that I think everybody gets that I love. And certainly I like, my work-life balance. I mean, Bill, the truth is I got to coach Little League this summer, and that's not unimportant to me. As a matter of fact, it's extraordinarily important to me. So the opportunity to do these things, I think, is where I need to be right now. And I look forward to being an aggressive taxpayer watchdog for the next 4 years.
You mentioned 39 years old. I remember former Governor Ned Breathitt, who was elected
about that age,
young,
right?
Yeah, and he said, timing is everything in politics, and the reason that he never got back into politics was that he said the window closes at some point. Did that come into your calculation?
Well, I'm a big believer that if you do your job well, opportunities present themselves. And I believe that good government is good politics. So we're going to keep practicing good government for as long as the people will let me. And I'm confident there'll be opportunities that present themselves for public service down the road.
There's one Democrat in the race at this point for governor, Attorney General Jack Conway. Do you anticipate there will be other candidacies?
Sure, I do. Jack is a strong candidate who, by virtue of having run a congressional race, having run 3 statewide campaigns, is pretty well known and well regarded in the Democratic Party. He's a strong candidate. But I think it's important to have active primaries because they demonstrate energy on behalf of the political party. And I think there will be other candidates, and I think it'll be a vigorous campaign, and I'm confident it'll produce someone who can win in November.
As you look ahead to the now Auditor's race running next year, do you anticipate working hard in behalf of the entire Democratic ticket?
Absolutely, although my focus will be on being reelected. We've built a strong bipartisan record of accomplishment in the Auditor's office. We've brought people together to do some very big things. We'll be campaigning on that and talking about what we want to do in the future, and that will be my first priority. But of course, I'm a Democrat, and I'm a strong believer that my party has the better set of ideas for Kentucky's future, and I won't be bashful about making that case.
Let's talk about some of what you have going on in that very busy auditor's office. How is the audit of the Fayette County school system going at this point?
Well, it's coming along. We've got a lot of resources on it, and I want to point out, just for context, that when you went, like I am, the first state auditor to ever get involved in public education, particularly coming off the heels of that historic audit of the Jefferson County Public Schools, where we found a significantly increasing bureaucracy in size that was robbing resources that ought to be in the classroom. I think it spurred a lot of conversation about the degree to which it's good to have the auditor involved in the schools. And I think that work, I think the work we did in Jefferson County is what sort of encouraged folks who have some issues here in Fayette County to ask me to have a look. Now, we know that the Fayette County Public Schools have seen a significant budget shortfall, and there have been some questions about what caused that shortfall. And we have certainly a culture within that school system where it's not particularly clear why we're in the space we're in, and then build the number of specific allegations that we got about mismanagement and abuse in the office. We have to have the time to ferret those all out, because it could be anything ranging from office politics to fundamental misunderstanding and a lack of communication between the finance team and the budget team within the office. Certainly there could be abuses. So we've got to take the time, and that's what we're doing right now, to find exactly what's what and who's who. And we'll come back in very short order and let the people of Fayette County know what the condition of the financial and administrative management of central office is.
So without the full context, but just looking at some of the numbers that you may have seen so far, has anything raised your concerns, or do you think would raise the concern of taxpayers? Well,
I always let the facts speak for themselves, and it's important as we're driving through this process to wait to make a final assessment based on the facts that we can establish them. But I think it's clear that we're certainly going to come out with some recommendations at the very least for improving the level of communication inside by policymakers inside that central office. And I think we'll have some things to say about better financial stewardship coming from the school board.
As you have looked at school systems, and you said you have done that as auditor and the first to have done that, it has been interesting, to say the least, that you've seen that there seems to be lack of governance in some areas.
That's right.
You have wanted more transparency with the contracts the superintendents are under, for instance.
That's right. You know, Bill, when you think about why it's important for me as the taxpayer watchdog to be in education, consider first that public education is the most important moral responsibility of government. And secondly, education is the largest investment that the taxpayers make. So of course I have to be in the space. And when we look at just the size and the scope of these governments, the Jefferson County Public Schools just passed a $1.3 billion budget. They're the second largest government in Kentucky. For comparative purposes, the mayor of Louisville just proposed a $550 million budget. So people need to understand that what we invest in education is enormous, and we have to be better stewards of it. We have to make sure that resources aren't being consumed by bureaucracies. We need to make sure they're getting to the classroom. When you think about the time and place in which we live, in which every teacher I know is spending money out of their pocket to buy materials for our kids, when teachers aren't getting regular raises, when school districts are being asked to do more with less, we've got to right-size these bureaucracies to get resources to the classroom. And a big part of doing that is making sure that you have a school board that has a significant degree of financial oversight so they can ask the tough questions, so they can do their part to be taxpayer watchdogs and to make sure that the resources are being allocated to the classroom where student performance is driven.
Can you see a time coming when maybe schools get regular audits as opposed to the, upon request, problem spotted areas?
I think we're definitely raising the game for the regular audits that are produced for these school districts. You know, every audit, every school district in Kentucky has to be audited annually by an outside CPA firm. The emergence of my office and being active in conducting special examinations is a whole new thing. And I think as a result of our office being present in the very good and substantive work we've done now with 16 or 17 special examinations into public school systems, I think everybody's getting the picture that you've really got to spend some time not only producing the annual audit, but understanding what's in it and using it as a management tool to improve the organization and to get resources to the classroom. And that's a huge and lasting contribution that I think my office has been able to make over the last couple of years.
We've mentioned you looked at Jefferson County, now at Fayette County Public Schools. Another major audit there we are awaiting from your offices of the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, we say it that way in Kentucky.
That's right.
Airport.
That's right.
Is that nearing completion? Will there be some headlines from that?
There will be headlines. And remember that CVG is the most critical economic development driver for a region with 2.1 million people. And I certainly believe that the degree to which that airport has been diminished over the last several years was part of the decision why Toyota left their North American headquarters and moved it to Texas. You know, and I fear that business community up there is really being undercut by an airport that isn't what it was. Now, listen, those issues aren't totally the fault of the airport. We've seen consolidation in the airport in the airline industry that negatively impacted that airport. But what we have to make sure is that we have a culture and a structure in place at that airport that is conducive to building, that is conducive to getting more flights and cheaper fares. You know, we've gone from 600 flights a day at that airport to 150, and I believe it's become the most expensive airport in the United States. We've got to have more flights, we've got to have cheaper fares, but beyond that, you have to have a structure and a culture at the airport that is more focused on making those accomplishments rather than the office politics that we've seen to an embarrassing degree over the last several years.
Need to get in a break, and we'll be back our remaining moments with Kentucky State Auditor Adam Edlen on Kentucky Newsmakers in just a moment. From WKYT, and State Auditor Adam Edlen is our guest today. We talked earlier about why he is not running for governor next year and will seek a second term as state auditor. How important was it that Kentucky passed this legislation that now requires state government to report it if there's a security breach of taxpayers' personal information?
It's extraordinarily important. You know, 95% of the rest of the country has protections for privacy, and we didn't have those in place. So now we require governments to do more with to protect the personal data they have on our citizens. And now all governments are going to be required to notify the public if that information is lost. And that's just a good common sense piece of legislation that's a very big deal in the way we live our lives in the digital age. And we did it by bringing a lot of people to work together in a bipartisan way, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Kind of the marquee bill that you came to the legislature with this year. Do you foresee one for next year?
Well, we're going to have conversations about changing the governance of the Jefferson County Public School Board, which is going to be significant. That's going to involve legislation. But we're going to we've got a lot of stuff left to do this year. We've got, as you pointed out, the Northern Kentucky Airport. We have a big initiative on rural hospitals that we're going to announce here shortly. So an awful lot going on, and there's a lot of time between now and the legislative session.
Adam Edlen, our state auditor, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank.
And we thank you for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. I'll see you bright and early this week on WKYT This Morning. We start at 4:30. We hope you make it a good week ahead.